Izzy and Iggy, they came to us really early. It was January 5th. A farmer was actually harvesting his corn crop, and the corn was harvested later because it was such a wet fall last year. And so the stories we were told, he was harvesting, and all of a sudden a black bear popped up and ran away. So he went back to look a little while later, and he saw two tiny little half-pound cubs lying there. So he contacted us right away, and we told him to just stay away for maybe a half an hour and just kind of watch and see if she'll go back to get her cubs. And we couldn't wait any longer because they would have frozen. So they're like little newborns, and they're usually 3/4 to 1 pound bear cubs when they're born. Well, these cubs are only a half a pound, so they were quite small. They had to be bottle fed, obviously, and even cubs coming in April will bottle feed them. But those cubs, because they were so small, we had to syringe feed them, like a tiny little syringe. We fed them every 2 hours around the clock for probably the first 2 weeks. Unfortunately, Iggy, who was a little smaller and more frail right from day one, when he came in with Izzy, we were feeding them exactly the same food and the same amount. Everything was the same, but it became apparent he wasn't digesting his food properly as Izzy was. Unfortunately, he was here for 2 weeks and then he passed away. Their personalities are quite set. It's just like humans. You're born with your personality and that's it, right? He is just the most easygoing, sweetest cub. Everybody loves Izzy. He's fun-loving, and Izzy's just happy-go-lucky, and he's a bit of an intellectual. We used to call him the little engineer because when the other cubs were wrestling and roughhousing, Izzy would be kind of sitting over in the corner by himself and playing with something. He liked to take things apart. So it's almost like he liked to figure out how things work. So we give him cardboard boxes with things in it. He'd pull everything out, or if there was a chair with a bunch of rungs, he'd be over kind of fiddling around, grabbing all the rungs and shaking them and just quietly just by himself. So the reason we called him, they had to start with the letter I because we could do alphabetically. And when we first got Izzy and Iggy, Izzy would kind of, when they're nursing side by side, Izzy would push Iggy with his paw kind of out of the way, and he'd be a little more aggressively fit. He's like a little fighter. So we're thinking, what should we call him? My husband and I both looked at each other exactly the same. We said Izzy, and then we said Asper. We actually named him after Izzy Asper because Izzy Asper was a go-getter, and I said, this cub's a go-getter. Izzy took over that shovel that we were kind of using as a dustpan and to move straw around. And it's really light and stuff, so we would just, when they'd come up, we'd open the doors of their enclosures and let them all come out in the hall to play while we cleaned and stuff. And Izzy he saw the shovel leaning against the thing and grabbed it, and he wouldn't let go of it. He was hanging on it, playing, so every time he came out, he'd play with the shovel, and only him. The other was maybe for a second, but Izzy loved it. That's his little engineer brain. He was examining it from every angle and sitting on it, so we just said, we just started calling it Izzy's shovel, and we ended up putting it right in the enclosure with them so that he could play with it whenever he wanted. That shovel is forevermore known as Izzy's shovel.
For more information and to keep up to date on Izzy and the other cubs, visit Black Bear Rescue Manitoba's Facebook page.